Today's notes are about basic trinomial factoring. Pause the video and try the warm-up. On numbers 1, 2, and 3, you could use FOIL or the box method to simplify or multiply out the expressions. So I'll do FOIL on the first one. F stands for first times first, so x times x is x squared. O stands for outside times outside, so x times -9 is -9x. I stands for inside times inside, so -6 times x is -6x. L stands for last, so -6 times -9 is +54. And then don't forget to add your like terms in the middle. So x squared minus 15x plus 54. On number 2, I'll do the box method to mix it up. You've probably noticed I definitely prefer foiling, but the box method is also a perfectly acceptable way to do these types of problems. So x times x is x squared. And let me do a different color. So x times x is x squared. 4 times x is 4x. X times 4 is 4x. 4 times 4 is 16. And then when you're doing this, you have to add your like terms. So at the very end, we get x squared plus 4x plus 4x is 8x plus 16. So that would be our final answer, highlighted in yellow. And then that last one, number 3, first times first, I'll do FOIL again. First times first is x squared. And then outside times outside is x times 6, which is 6x. Inside times inside is -2 times x, which is -2x. And last times last is -12. Add your like terms in the middle. So x squared plus 4x minus 12. All right, so basic trinomial factoring. So all the problems we're going to focus on today are going to have an a value of 1. So if you look down, let me move this. If you look down at example 1 where it says both positive and it says factor x squared plus 7x plus 10, when I say the a value is 1, I'm talking right here. So all the problems today, there is not going to be a number in front of x squared except for an invisible 1. So the basic gist of trinomial factoring is that you're trying to find two numbers that can multiply to the constant in the back. So you want to multiply to 3 in this example off to the right. And then you want to add to the number in the middle right in front of the x. So again, you're looking for two numbers that multiply to the number in the back, and then they have to add to the number in front of the x. So when you look at this example, the 3 and the 1, so this 3 right here, and this 1 right here, 3 times 1 is 3, and then 3 plus 1 is 4. So 3 and 1 multiply to 3, and they add to 4. So once you find the two numbers that work, they go right where you see the 3 and the 1 that I circled. The x in the front slot of the two sets of parentheses, that comes from the fact that you're trying to break apart an x squared. So right here, this x squared was being broken apart into x times x, since x times x is x squared. And then the way this is labeled, the x plus 3 is considered a factor of the original expression, and then the x plus 1 is considered a factor of the original expression. So like we've talked a million times before, if you multiply back out your answer, you should get what you started with, because factoring and multiplication they're kind of inverse operations of each other, so they undo each other. So when you FOIL out x plus 3 times x plus 1, you get x squared plus 4x plus 3. So let's get over to example 1. So what two numbers multiply to be 10 and add to be 7? So that would be 5 and 2, since 5 times 2 is 10 and 5 plus 2 is 7. So that means that you can write x squared plus 7x plus 10 as x plus 5 times x plus 2. So if you were to FOIL this out, you would get x squared plus 7x plus 10. On number 4, we want to try to factor x squared plus 5x plus 6. So I'm going to show you guys how I organize my guesses. So I'm going to pretend that I'm somebody who's not super good with my factors, and I'll show you how I organize my guesses. So I basically say I need two numbers that multiply to 6, and then those same two numbers have to add to 5. And again, I'm pretending like I have no clue about my number sense. So just start with 1. So I write down 1. I take 6, since I'm trying to multiply to 6, I divide it by 1. So 6 divided by 1 is 6. Then I check and I add these up to see if it adds up to the number I want it to add up to. So 1 plus 6 is 7, not 5, meaning no, that does not work. So then try 2. I always start at 1, try 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. So yes, this does work. Those are my two numbers. So then over off to the left-hand side is where I get ready to write my answer. So when I'm doing basic trinomial factoring, my answer always has the two sets of parentheses. This x squared is getting split into x times x, because x times x is x squared. So that's where those two blue x's come from. Then I'm using the two numbers I found over here, the 2 and the 3, and I just put 1 in each set of parentheses. The 2 and the 3 were both positive, so I do a plus 2 and a plus 3. And then that should be it. If I were to FOIL this out, I would get x squared plus 5x plus 6. Pause the video and try number 5. So on number 5, again, if I was showing my work pretending like I'm someone who's not great with my number sense, I need two numbers that multiply to 8, and then those same two numbers have to add to 6, right? Because you always multiply to the constant in the back, and then you always add to the number in front of the x. So start with 1. 8 divided by 1 is 8. And then add those together and see if they work. So 1 plus 8 is 9, not 6. So that does not work. Let me try 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 plus 4 is 6. So yes, that works. So I come over to the left side. I get ready to write my answer. Anytime we're doing a basic trinomial, we always start with our two sets of parentheses. The first term is always the x and the x, because that is us splitting up x squared. Then use the numbers that you found over here that actually worked, so the 2 and the 4. Put a 2 in one set of parentheses and a 4 in the other set of parentheses. You may be wondering, does it matter if I put the 2 first or the 4 first? It does not matter. You could have what I just wrote in the box, or you could have x plus 4 times x plus 2. Either one is totally fine, because multiplication is commutative, which is a fancy way of saying the order doesn't matter. For example, 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 3 is also 12. Example 2, we're trying to factor x squared minus 7x plus 6. So we need two numbers that multiply to the number in the back. So you want to multiply to 6. And then those same two numbers need to add to negative 7. So the signs matter. Add to negative 7. So the two numbers that work are negative 6 and negative 1. So that means you could write your final answer as x minus 6 times x minus 1. So on number 6, if I'm keeping track of all my guesses, I'm trying to multiply to a positive 20 and then trying to add to a negative 9. So start with 1. 20 divided by 1 is 20. Now here's the trick though. If I'm looking for two numbers that have to add up to a negative 9, but they have to multiply to a positive 20, both of the numbers I'm looking for have to be negative. So I'm going to make it a negative 1 and a negative 20. Add those up, you get negative 21. So no, that doesn't work. Let me try 2. So 20 divided by 2 is 10. I have to make both of them negative because that's the only way I could add up to a negative 9 and still multiply to a positive 20 is if both numbers are negative. And then negative 2 plus negative 10 is negative 12. So that still doesn't work. All right, try 3. 20 divided by 3. That's a decimal. That doesn't work. So honestly, I wouldn't even bother writing that down. Try the next number, 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. Make them both negative. Negative 4 plus negative 5 is negative 9. There we go. So we found the two numbers that work. So now we head over to the left side. Get ready to write our answer. So always the two sets of parentheses with the x in the first slot. And again, the x in the first slot is us splitting x squared into x times x. And then negative 4 and negative 5. So that's it. That's your answer. If you FOIL that back out, you get what you started with. Pause the video and try 7. So on 7, we're trying to multiply to 15, and then we're trying to add to negative 8. So start with 1. 15 divided by 1 is 15. I have to make both of the numbers negative because that's the only way I can multiply to a positive number, but then add to a negative number. So negative 1 plus negative 15 is negative 16. That doesn't work. Try 2. 15 divided by 2, that's a decimal, so I wouldn't even bother writing that down. Try 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5. They both need to be negative. Negative 3 plus negative 5 is negative 8. So yes, that works. So we head over to the left side. We get ready to write our answer. Two sets of parentheses, x and x in the front. That's that x squared getting split into x times x. And then your negative 3 and your negative 5. On this last example, you have one positive number and one negative number in your answer. So if I'm trying to factor x squared plus x minus 12, you want two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to 1. If you're wondering where I got the 1 from, there's an invisible 1 right here. So you always multiply to the number in the back, and then you always add to the number in the middle. So if you don't see a number in front of the x, there's an invisible 1 there. So negative 3 and 4 are the numbers that work. On 8, we want to multiply to negative 14, and then we want to add to positive 5. So start with 1. 14 divided by 1 is 14. And then here's again where we have to think a little bit. If I'm going to multiply to a negative 14, that means I need one positive number and one negative number. If I have to add to a positive 5, my bigger number has to be positive. If it wasn't, I would be adding up to a negative number. So on all of my guesses for this problem, I'm going to put the negative sign on the smaller number. So negative 1 plus 14 is 13. That does not work. Let me try 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. I have to put the negative sign on the smaller number. And then negative 2 plus 7 is 5. So there we go. Those are the numbers that work. So we head off to the left side, get ready to write our answer. So two sets of parentheses. X always in the first slot of the two sets of parentheses because that's us splitting x squared into x times x. And then negative 2 and positive 7. And if we were to multiply that out, we would get what we started with. On number 9, we are trying to multiply to negative 27. And then we're trying to add to negative 6. So start with 1. 27 divided by 1 is 27. Now on this one, I still need one positive and one negative number because that's the only way I can multiply to a negative 27. But this time I have to add up to a negative 6. So in order to add up to a negative number, my bigger numbers are going to have to be negative. So in all my guesses, I'm going to make the bigger number negative. So 1 plus negative 27 is negative 26. That does not work. Try 2. 27 divided by 2 is a decimal, so I won't even bother writing that down. Try 3. 27 divided by 3 is 9. I'm going to put the negative sign on the bigger number because that's the only way I can add up to a negative. And then sure enough, that works. 3 plus negative 9 is negative 6. So those are the numbers that work. Head off to the left to write our answer. So 2 sets of parentheses with the x in the front slot since we're splitting x squared into x times x. And then a positive 3 and a negative 9. And remember, the signs matter. Like the 3 has to be positive, the 9 has to be negative. That matters. As far as switching the factors like this, that's fine. So you can switch it like that, that's fine. But the 3 has to be positive and the 9 has to be negative. Pause the video and try 10. So on 10, we're multiplying to negative 8 and then adding to negative 7. So start with 1. 8 divided by 1 is 8. Since I'm trying to add up to a negative number, I need to put the negative sign on the bigger number. 1 plus negative 8 is negative 7. So we got lucky on this one. The very first option worked. So we're going to do x and x, because you split x squared into x times x, and then plus 1 minus 8. So there's your answer. If an expression cannot be factored, write not factorable or cannot be factored. So for example, if someone said factor x squared plus 2x minus 7, there are not two numbers that multiply to negative 7 and add to 2. Therefore, this expression is not factorable. We usually don't give a lot of those to you, but sometimes we do, so I just wanted you to be aware of that. I would pause the video and try the rest of the problems and then check them out when you're ready. So on part A, I want to multiply to negative 15 and add to 2. 15 divided by 1 is 15. Since I am trying to add to a positive number, that means my bigger number needs to be positive and my smaller number needs to be negative. So I'm always going to put the negative sign on the smaller number for this problem. Negative 1 plus 15 is 14. That does not work. If I try 2, 15 divided by 2 is a decimal, so don't even bother writing it down. Let me try 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Put the negative sign on the smaller number since I'm trying to add up to a positive number. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. So that works. So I'm going to write down x minus 3 and x plus 5 as my final answer. Part B, I'm going to multiply to negative 5 and add to negative 4. So 5 divided by 1 is 5. If I'm trying to add up to a negative number, that means I need to put the negative sign on my bigger number. So 1 plus negative 5 is negative 4. So again, we got lucky. The very first one we tried worked. So then I have x plus 1 and x minus 5. Remember, if you FOIL out your answer, you should get what you started with. So you can always check these answers. Part C, multiply to 4, add to 5. So 4 divided by 1 is 4. Everything's positive here. So I'm multiplying to a positive. I'm adding to a positive, so I don't have to worry about any negative signs. 1 plus 4 is 5. Done. Those are the numbers that work. So x plus 1 and x plus 4. Part D, multiply to negative 6, add to 1. So remember, if you don't see a 1, or if you don't see a number in front of the x, there's an invisible 1 there. 6 divided by 1 is 6. I have to multiply to a negative, though, so one of these numbers has to be negative. And since I'm trying to add to a positive number, my bigger number has to be positive, my smaller number has to be negative. Negative 1 plus 6 is 5, so that doesn't work. Let me try 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. One of these has to be negative. It's going to be the smaller number since I'm trying to add up to a positive. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1, so there we go. And then as far as our answer goes, x minus 2, x plus 3. For e, multiply to negative 10, add to 3. 10 divided by 1 is 10. I'm supposed to be multiplying to a negative number, so one of these has to be negative. And I'm supposed to be adding to a positive number, so I'm going to make my smaller numbers negative. Negative 1 plus 10 is 9. That does not work. Let me try 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Smaller number negative. Negative 2 plus 5 is 3. There we go. So I have x minus 2 times x plus 5. Part F, multiply to 16, add to 8. 16 divided by 1 is 16. 1 plus 16 is 17. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 2 plus 8 is 10. 16 divided by 3 is a decimal, so I'm not even going to bother writing it down. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. There we go. So then our final answer, x plus 4 times x plus 4. Part G, we want to multiply to 8 and then add to negative 6. 8 divided by 1 is 8. I'm supposed to be adding up to a negative number, meaning both of my numbers have to be negative, because that's the only way I can multiply to a positive, but then add to a negative. So negative 1 plus negative 8 is negative 9. That does not work. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Make them both negative. So yes, that works. Negative 2 plus negative 4 is negative 6. So then we get ready for our answer. We have x minus 2 and x minus 4. Letter H, we want to multiply to positive 9, add to negative 6. 9 divided by 1 is 9. I'm trying to multiply to a positive number but add to a negative, so both of my numbers have to be negative. Negative 1 and negative 9 adds up to negative 10. So that is not negative 6, so that does not work. Try 2. 9 divided by 2 is a decimal, so I won't even bother writing it down. Try 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Make both numbers negative. Negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6, so that works. So we get ready to write our answer. X minus 3, x minus 3, and that would be it. Last one, you're looking for two numbers that multiply to 14. Those same two numbers need to add to 9. So 14 divided by 1 is 14. Everything's positive, so I don't have to worry about any negative numbers. 1 plus 14 is 15. That doesn't work. Try 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 2 plus 7 is 9. There we go. So we get ready to write our final answer. X plus 2 and x plus 7. So hopefully, after doing so many of those, you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with it.